What if the man everyone says is dead never really left at all? What if the truth about Ghost has been hiding right in front of us, buried inside moments from the past that we never questioned enough? Ghost was officially declared dead, but his story never ended in the minds of the fans. From the very moment James St. Patrick fell, something felt unfinished. The Power universe moved forward, new stories were born, new enemies rose, but Ghost never stopped being part of the conversation. That alone is strange. In a world where characters die brutally and disappear forever, Ghost stayed alive in memory, in dialogue, and in shadows. His name is still spoken with fear, respect, and confusion. People don't talk about dead men like that unless something is missing. Ghost was never just another character. He was the architect, the chess player, the man who always saw the board before anyone else even realized there was a game. When someone like that supposedly dies, the question is not how he fell, but whether he planned it. Ghost spent his entire life preparing for escape routes. He talked about clean slates, new identities, and starting over more than any other character in Power. He didn't just want power, he wanted freedom. That matters now more than ever. Looking back, his final days were filled with moments that feel less like an ending and more like a setup. He wasn't scared. He wasn't cornered. He was calm, almost too calm. Ghost knew enemies were closing in from every side, yet he walked like a man who already accepted the outcome. Or maybe like a man who already knew the next move. That calmness has never been explained, and that silence is where the mystery begins to grow. Fans often focus on the gunshot, the fall, and the chaos that followed, but rarely do they focus on what Ghost had already lost and what he had already gained. By that point, Ghost had enemies everywhere, but he also had knowledge, leverage, and secrets that could protect him forever. He knew who was dirty, who was loyal, and who was weak. A man like that doesn't just die without insurance. Ghost always believed in control, and even in moments when he lost it, he found ways to take it back. That belief is key. If Ghost truly wanted out, faking his death would be the cleanest exit he could ever create. The idea of Ghost being gone forever feels too simple for a universe built on layers, lies, and long games. Power never gives easy endings. Every death leaves consequences, and every silence hides something darker underneath. Ghost's death created chaos, but it also created opportunity. His absence pushed others forward, especially Tariq, forcing him to become something he never fully understood. But what if that was the point? What if Ghost disappearing was not about escape, but about forcing the next generation to rise without his shadow blocking the light? Ghost always believed pain was a teacher. Maybe his disappearance was the final lesson. The mystery deepens when you realize how often Ghost is still present without physically being there. Characters speak his name like a warning. His influence shapes decisions long after his supposed death. His legacy controls rooms he never walks into. That kind of presence does not fade naturally. It lingers because it is unfinished. The Power universe treats Ghost like a myth, not a memory. And myths are usually built on truths that people are not ready to face yet. When a story refuses to let go of a character, it's often because the story itself isn't done with them. Ghost once said that the biggest trick is making people believe you are exactly where they think you are. That line feels different now. It feels less like dialogue and more like a confession hiding in plain sight. If Ghost wanted to vanish, he wouldn't run. He would let the world believe he was gone. No questions, nobody worth doubting, no reason to search. That is how Ghost thinks, silent, clean, final, or at least final enough to fool everyone watching. And if that is true, then the question is no longer whether Ghost is alive, but where he chose to disappear. The idea of Ghost Town starts to take shape here, not just as a place, but as a state of existence. A man erased, but still breathing. A king without a throne, watching his kingdom burn from a distance. Ghost always wanted more than survival. He wanted control over his destiny. Death would take that away. Disappearing would give it back. And if the past holds clues about where Ghost is now, then maybe the truth has been whispering to us the entire time. We just never listened closely enough. When you go back and rewatch the earlier seasons, something starts to feel different. Lines that once sounded normal now feel loaded. Moments that felt small suddenly feel planned. James St. Patrick was always careful with his words, but he was even more careful with his exits. Ghost never liked loose ends. Every time he left a room, he made sure he controlled what people believed about him. That habit didn't change near the end. In fact, it became stronger. There are scenes where Ghost talks about being tired, not just tired of the game, but tired of being known. He speaks about how everyone already decided who he is, no matter what he does. That is not the mindset of a man ready to die. That is the mindset of a man thinking about disappearing. One of the biggest clues from the past is how often Ghost talked about reinvention. Clubs, politics, family, crime, power. He moved between worlds like it was nothing. That ability matters. Someone who can build new lives can also abandon one. Ghost knew how to erase trails, clean records, and create distance. He helped others disappear before. He knew how fake names worked, how money could vanish, and how silence could protect more than guns ever could. When you put all that together, it becomes harder to believe he never thought about using those skills for himself. Especially when his enemies were no longer just rivals, but people who once loved him. Another detail that stands out is how little we actually saw confirmed. Power has never been shy about showing death in full detail. We have seen bodies, blood, funerals, and aftermaths that leave no doubt. But with Ghost, the focus quickly shifted away from proof and toward reaction. Everyone responded as if he was gone, but the audience was never allowed full closure. That choice feels intentional. The show wanted us to believe what the characters believed, not what was proven. That difference matters. Ghost understood perception better than anyone else. If people believe you are dead, you might as well be. There are also moments where Ghost speaks about legacy in a strange way. Not legacy as memory, but legacy as control after absence. He often talked about how actions echo even when a person is gone. That idea fits too perfectly with what happened next. His absence shaped everything. Tariq changed. Power shifted. Enemies rose and fell because of decisions Ghost made before he vanished. It almost feels like Ghost designed the future knowing he wouldn't be there to guide it directly. That level of planning does not happen overnight. It takes foresight, and Ghost always had that. Even the way Ghost handled danger toward the end feels calculated. He stopped fighting back the way he used to. He let pressure build. He let people believe he was cornered. That is dangerous unless you already know the outcome. Ghost never let himself be weak unless it served a purpose. Looking back, his restraint feels less like defeat and more like patience. Almost like he was waiting for the exact moment when everything would lock into place. The kind of moment where the only escape left is the one no one expects. When people say Ghost had no reason to live, they forget something important. Ghost never wanted peace through death. He wanted peace through control. He wanted a world where he was no longer hunted, judged, or trapped by his own name. Death gives none of that. Disappearance gives all of it. The past is filled with hints that Ghost wanted to step outside the story, not end it. And if the past really holds clues, then maybe Ghost didn't vanish in chaos. Maybe he left quietly, exactly the way a true ghost would. The idea of Ghost Town changes everything when you stop seeing it as just a phrase and start seeing it as a mindset. In the Power universe, nothing is ever said by accident. Words carry weight, and symbols usually mean more than what they show on the surface. When Ghost spoke about emptiness, silence, and places where no one looks twice, it sounded less like frustration and more like longing. James St. Patrick spent his whole life surrounded by noise, enemies, expectations, and eyes watching his every move. For a man like that, the idea of a place where no one knows your name is not weakness. It is freedom. Ghost Town does not have to be a broken down place with empty streets. It can be any place where the past no longer follows you. A town where nobody asks questions, where money talks quietly, and where power is invisible. Ghost understood that real power does not always sit on a throne. Sometimes it hides. Sometimes it watches. Throughout the series, Ghost showed that he was just as comfortable pulling strings from the shadows as he was standing in the spotlight. If he wanted to disappear, he wouldn't choose chaos. He would choose calm. A place that feels dead to the world but alive enough to survive. There is also something important about timing. Ghost's disappearance came at a moment when everyone around him was distracted by their own agendas. That is not luck. That is strategy. Ghost Town, as a concept, fits perfectly into that strategy. While others fight for territory, attention, and respect, the smartest move is to step away completely. Ghost never feared being alone. He feared being trapped. And nothing traps a man faster than being known by everyone. Disappearing into a place where he is invisible. The power universe loves cycles. Fathers become sons. Kings fall and are replaced. Ghost understood that his presence would always block others from becoming who they needed to be. By removing himself, he allowed the world to move forward. Ghost Town becomes the place where the old king watches the new one struggle, learn, and fail. Not to interfere, but to understand when, or if, he's ever needed again. That kind of patience fits Ghost perfectly. Ghost Town also protects him. No enemies. No allies who might slip. No family who could be used against him. Just distance. Just quiet. Just control. If Ghost is alive, he would not hide somewhere dramatic. He would hide somewhere boring. Somewhere forgotten. Somewhere no one would ever think to look because it feels empty. That is the real meaning of Ghost Town. A place so lifeless to the world that the most dangerous man could live there and never be noticed. And for Ghost, that might be the safest place he has ever been. The meaning of Ghost Town becomes even deeper when you stop thinking about it as a hiding place and start thinking about it as a strategy. James St. Patrick never made emotional moves without logic behind them. Everything he did had layers. When people hear Ghost Town, they imagine emptiness, but Ghost always knew that emptiness can be powerful. A place without noise is a place where no one is listening. A place without history is a place where the past has no power. That is exactly the kind of space Ghost would choose if he wanted to disappear without losing control. Throughout the power story, Ghost struggled most when people thought they knew him. Being seen was his biggest weakness. The moment others believed they understood Ghost, they used that belief against him. Enemies attacked what they thought was predictable. Friends betrayed what they thought was familiar. Ghost learned that the safest position is the one no one understands. Ghost Town fits that lesson perfectly. It represents a world where no one expects anything from him, where no one projects their anger, fear, or hope onto his name. In that kind of place, Ghost stops being a symbol and becomes just another face. Ghost also understood how attention works. He watched people chase power loudly and die loudly. He watched empires fall because their leaders needed to be seen. Ghost never needed that validation. Even when he ran clubs and moved in political circles, his true power always lived behind closed doors. So when everything started closing in, stepping away instead of fighting back made sense. Ghost Town is not retreat. It is evolution. It is the moment where power stops being public and becomes invisible. Another important part of Ghost Town is isolation. Ghost lost trust in almost everyone. Love turned into pain. Loyalty turned into threat. Every connection became a risk. Living inside that kind of world destroys a person slowly. Ghost always believed survival meant adapting. Removing himself from everyone who could hurt him was the smartest adaptation left. A place where he knows no one, and no one knows him, removes leverage from every enemy he ever had. No family to threaten. No reputation to destroy. No past to weaponize. There is also something haunting about the way Ghost spoke near the end. He talked less about winning and more about ending cycles. He seemed aware that his presence created damage even when he tried to do right. Ghost Town represents breaking that cycle. By disappearing, he allows the story to move without him controlling every outcome. That does not mean he stopped caring. It means he accepted that sometimes the best way to protect what you love is to step away from it. Ghost Town could also be temporary. Ghost never believed in permanent answers. He believed in timing. A place like that allows him to wait, to watch from afar, to see who survives, who grows, and who fails. Ghost was always a teacher in his own way, even when his lessons were harsh. By vanishing, he forces others to stand on their own. That kind of lesson only works if the teacher stays silent. The most dangerous thing about Ghost Town is how simple it is. No drama, no chase, no spotlight, just distance. That simplicity is what makes it believable. If Ghost wanted to fake his death, he would not build a new empire right away. He would let the world calm down. He would let his name fade. He would choose a place where nothing happens, because nothing happening means no attention. And attention is what gets people killed. Ghost Town is not about hiding forever. It is about choosing when to be seen again, if ever. Ghost always wanted control over his story. Death takes that control away. Disappearing gives it back. If Ghost is still alive, then Ghost Town is not the end of his journey. It is the pause between chapters. A silent space where the smartest man in the room waits for the moment when silence is no longer the best move when it comes to Ghost's fate. What the showrunner says matters just as much as what she refuses to confirm. Courtney A. Kemp has always been careful with her words, especially when Ghost is mentioned. She never fully shuts the door, and she never opens it wide either. That balance is not accidental. In television, certainty kills mystery. Ambiguity keeps stories alive. The way Ghost's fate has been handled feels less like closure and more like preservation. The silence around him has become part of the storytelling itself. Over the years, interviews and comments have danced around one key idea. Ghost's story is finished, but Ghost as a presence is not. That distinction matters. A story being finished does not always mean a character is gone forever. Sometimes it means the story has moved to a place where the truth cannot be revealed yet. Showrunners understand the value of patience. They know when to let fans sit with questions, because unanswered questions build loyalty, theories, and long-term interest. Ghost has become the biggest unanswered question in the Power universe, and that alone makes him valuable. What stands out most is how often Ghost's name still comes up in conversations about the franchise. Even when discussing spin-offs and new leads, Ghost is never far from the topic. That is unusual. Most dead characters fade into the background once the story shifts focus. Ghost didn't. His influence is still used to frame other characters' choices, especially Tariq's. That suggests Ghost was never meant to be erased completely. From a creative standpoint, keeping Ghost unresolved allows the universe to stay flexible. It leaves room for future reveals without forcing immediate payoff. Another important detail is how carefully the franchise protects Ghost's ending. There are no flashbacks that fully explain his final moments. There is no deep dive that removes doubt. Everything is shown through reaction, not confirmation. That creative choice aligns with long-term planning. When a show truly wants to end a character forever, it removes doubt. When it wants options, it leaves gaps. Ghost's ending is full of gaps. Those gaps feel intentional, especially when you consider how precise the Power universe usually is with consequences and clarity. Showrunners also understand the emotional bond between fans and characters. Ghost is not just a favorite. He is the foundation. Removing him permanently without the possibility of return would limit future storytelling. Keeping his status unclear keeps fans emotionally invested across multiple series. It also allows Ghost to exist as both memory and threat. Characters behave differently when they believe a legend might still be alive. Fear changes decisions. Hope changes choices. That emotional tension adds depth to the entire universe. There is also the business side of storytelling that cannot be ignored. Franchises are built on flexibility. Leaving Ghost's feet open allows the story to adapt to future needs. That does not mean a return is guaranteed. It means the option exists, and options are powerful. They allow creators to respond to audience demand, narrative gaps, and timing. Ghost returning too early would cheapen the mystery. Ghost never returning at all would waste it. The current silence sits perfectly in between. What makes the situation even more interesting is how often the showrunner redirects questions instead of answering them directly. That redirection feels deliberate. Instead of denying theories, she allows them to live. Instead of confirming death, she emphasizes impact. That language choice keeps Ghost alive in conversation without committing to a direction. In storytelling, that is a classic move when something important is being saved for later. Ghost has become more than a character. He is a narrative tool. He represents legacy, consequence, and unfinished business. As long as his fate remains unclear, the Power universe retains tension beneath every storyline. That tension is valuable. It keeps viewers questioning, debating, and watching closely. Whether Ghost ever physically returns or not, the way his absence is handled suggests one thing clearly. The door was never fully closed. And in a universe built on long games, a door left open is never meaningless. From a storytelling point of view, Ghost coming back would not feel forced or cheap. It would feel earned. James St. Patrick was never just a man who ruled through fear or money. He ruled through influence, timing, and understanding human weakness. His absence created a vacuum that everyone else rushed to fill, and that vacuum exposed who was truly ready for power and who was only pretending. Bringing Ghost back would not erase what happened. It would expose it. It would force every character to face the truth of who they became when the man who shaped them disappeared. The biggest reason Ghost's return makes sense is Tariq. Tariq's entire journey exists in Ghost's shadow. Every decision Tariq makes is either a reaction to his father or an attempt to prove he